Chapter 16 Proposal. It is scary realising how much of an impact one person can have on your heart as times went by. I decided that I wanted to marry Jane and really hoped that she felt the same way about me. I decided that I wanted to be very traditional about the whole thing, which meant asking Jane's father George for his permission to marry his only daughter. It wasn't the easiest to get George on his own when Jane was out of the house. A couple of times I popped round when Jane was meant to be at work, only to discover she was at home because she'd switched her shifts. I was able to blame turning up on having memory problems and getting my dates confused. My good old brain injury to the rescue, covering for me again. Eventually I managed to go round to the Peart household and find George there alone. As he opened the door, he said that Jane was at work. He looked confused when I said, "Good, it's you I need to speak to, George." He ushered me in and we went and sat in the living room. We made small talk for a couple of minutes, weather, football, while I gathered my courage and asked him for permission to take his daughter's hand in marriage. George looked stunned and slightly uncomfortable. After all, this, if nothing else, was proof that his little girl, his only daughter, was a grown woman, ready to leave to start her own family. He looked at me in a quiet voice and said, "You have my permission." I won't try and do his accent. And I was elated. All I had to do now was actually ask Jane to marry me. And I wanted this to be the most special event of our life so far. It had to be. Perfect. The most romantic gesture I could make to this woman means so much to me. I eventually settled on a plan that was romantic, elegant, while harking back to our early days hanging around Surrey Quays and swimming in the docks. I booked a river cruise along the River Thames. The boat had a band playing light jazz and I pre-ordered a two-course dinner for us. When I told the cruise operator what I had planned, they agreed that we could have a table near the front of the boat and wished me good luck. I'd got the proposal venue sorted. I knew that I had to propose as we passed under Tower Bridge. I now needed a ring for my fiancée-to-be. I wasn't a big jewellery buyer, so I asked Dad where the best place to go was. He suggested that I try Hatton Garden. It was a small area of London that has more jewellers than you can shake a stick at. I spent an afternoon visiting all the shops before I found the ring. It wasn't just any ring, it was white gold with a bright diamond. There were rings around with bigger diamonds in, but there was something about the diamond that caught the light that moved me. Jewellers assess diamonds by something they call the 4 C's. They stand for carat, cut, clarity and colour. The diamond on this ring outshone some bigger diamonds that were there. It was flawless. The ring was white gold. That was Jane's favourite precious metal and mine too. I had a white gold bangle that I bought many years previously with a small inheritance my godfather left me, R.I.P. Martin. I was enchanted and luckily for me, the ring was in Jane's size. My family and friends were as excited as I was. I think for Mum and Dad, they saw this as the next big step in my recovery and rehabilitation. Alan was just excited for me. He thought Jane was lovely and that we worked well together. Me? I thought Jane was the best thing to come into my life. The day of the proposal drew closer and I was getting more nervous. Jane knew that we was doing a dinner and a jazz cruise, but had no suspicion of anything else. We arranged to meet at the pier near Embankment Tube Station. I left the house, I was suited, I was booted. I wanted to look the best for Jane, and tonight wasn't the night for jeans and a t-shirt. The ring was in my pocket, and as I sat on the tube train, I got the ring out. It was in a small velvet-coloured presentation box, and I just stared at it before closing the box and putting it back in my pocket. A little old lady was sitting opposite me. She gave me the knowing smile and rubbed her own wedding band. I smiled back, thinking about me and Jane growing old together. Mr. and Mrs. Whitehead. It sounded so adult, so grown up and serious. I couldn't wait. I got to our meeting point just outside Embankment Station, but there was no sign of Jane. I felt that familiar fear and dread start to rise. But then my phone beeped. It was a text from Jane. "I am running late," she wrote. I was just typing out my reply when she came running up. She looked quite surprised at the extra tight cuddle I gave her. I was very relieved. We decided not to go to the pub for a quick drink, but straight to the pier instead. I really didn't want to miss the cruise. We chatted about holidays and kept mainly to chit-chat and small talk while we waited for the boat to arrive. We weren't there long before it pulled up and we boarded. I gave my name to the attendant and he showed us to our table. We were shown to our table. I had asked for a nice table. What we were given even surpassed my expectations. We walked through the dining hall. We walked past the dining tables where people were staring at us as we were ushered to a lone table at the front of the boat, a premium spot, but with privacy. It was the best table on the boat. I was really taken with how well the cruise company had set things up. Jane was wide-eyed with amazement, her look echoing mine. I glanced around and noticed the band looking over at us repeatedly. We were seated and champagne I ordered arrived. The jazz band was a four-piece. They played softly in the background. The weather was clear. The backdrop of London was stunning. Jane just looked beautiful. Every time I looked at her, she took my breath away. I was so proud that a stunning woman like Jane had chosen to be with me. I had been worried that the heat of the day would linger on and I would end up a sweaty mess, but thankfully the evening was mild. The lights on the buildings lining the Thames glittered, and it was all I could do not to panic and blurt out my proposal. I was busy rehearsing my proposal in my head when the waiter appeared with the menus. It was a good job I was concentrating, or I would have ended up proposing to him. Jane headed off to the ladies' room. I checked that the ring was still in my pocket and made some fortuitous time occurred. As Jane returned, we were approaching Tower Bridge and the boat's light dimmed and the band started playing a romantic tune. I honestly thought that my surprise wasn't going to be a surprise and that Jane would twig what was happening, and I thought the boat was turning around. She didn't. She just walked back to the table, probably thinking about the meal or another glass of champagne. She did not expect me to stand up, then go down on one knee. I took a deep breath and just let the words flow. "You mean everything to me. I have grown with you. You have made me the happiest person alive. You are my rock, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" The boat was turning small circles just in front of Tower Bridge, almost pirouetting. My mind was doing the same. I held my breath waiting for Jane's reply, held out the ring. Jane looked at me, held my hand. I stood up as she replied, "Course, yeah." It wasn't the most eloquent or romantic response, but it was one straight from the heart. We stood at the front of the boat and kissed. I was jubilant. The most loving, caring and beautiful woman in the world had just said yes to me. As we stood there, hand in hand, looking at London in the twilight, a few people came up to ask if they'd just witnessed our engagement. They offered their congratulations. Before we knew it, our engagement was announced on the boat's public address system. We were cheered. The boat continued to play and the cruise continued towards Woolwich. As we left the boat, the crew offered their congratulations. One of the crew explained that our table had been specifically set up for us, and it was in fact the band's usual spot. Explained why they'd been looking at us all night.